This is Stephen Winsenberg. Hope you're having a good Saturday. Dr. Cleveland Kent Evans is with us. He's been with us a couple of times before. He's one of my favorite guests because he knows all sorts of things about names. He's written a couple of books, including The Ultimate Baby Name Guide. And Dr. Evans, welcome back to WHO Radio.
Thank you for having me.
It's always good to talk to you, and this is your busy time of year because they've released the list of popular names from 1998, what people named their children. And I've seen you quoted in the paper and seen different articles that have involved you. And let's talk about the big names from last year, okay?
Fine.
Let's start with the boys. I'll read from the list here. Number 10, 10th most popular boy's name is Zachary. Number 9 is Tyler. 8, Austin. 7, Brandon. 6, Christopher. 5, Joshua. 4, Nicholas. 3, Matthew. Number 2 is Jacob, and the number 1 name in the land, and it has been for a number of years, is Michael. And Dr. Evans, why is Michael so popular?
Well, I think part of it is the fact that most of the publicity it continues to get has been positive. You know, you still have Michael Jordan, as well as actors like Michael Fox and Michael Douglas.
Okay.
And it stays being sort of the nice everyday guy image name.
So if there's a popular celebrity or sports star, people tend to name their children after that because they associate it with something positive.
Yes, although actually today it's more often the fictional character an actor plays than the actor himself.
Oh, okay. Well, in that boys list, though, we have Jacob. I can't think of too many famous Jacobs out there right now, or Nicholas. Or even Austin. I don't know too many famous people named Austin. Why do people choose those names?
Those are come up because most parents today are looking for something that's different but not too different. That is what they often say. And so what happens with that is that newly popular names are things that sound like names that were popular 10 years ago, and everybody picks up on them because they seem a little different. And so Jacob is sort of the replacement for Jason, which was really big back in the 70s. And Austin is sort of the replacement for Dustin and Justin, which were big.
So they want something that's a little different, but still that sounds somewhat familiar.
Yes.
Okay. Now in Iowa, the number 1 boy's name is Jacob, and I see on this list in your top boys' names, 4 of the top 5 are biblical names: Michael, Jacob, Matthew, and Joshua. Are boys more apt to be named after Bible people?
I think boys are more likely to get traditional names, and the Bible is one of the sources of tradition. I think probably a lot of parents, though, who use names like Jacob and Joshua are probably these days are thinking more of old Western TV shows they watched when they were kids than they're thinking of the Bible.
So they just happen to be Bible names, but most people don't name them for that reason.
Yeah, a few parents certainly do, but I think most of them, it's just sort of a bonus. It's not, they don't go directly to the Bible, or else we'd have a lot more kids named Moses, which
Let's go to the girls' list, and this is quite a bit different. Instead of these more traditional names on the boys' list, we have some unusual names on the girls' list. Number 10, most popular last year, Madison. Number 9, Taylor. 8, Samantha. 7, Alexis. 6, Brianna. 5, Ashley. Number 4 is Hannah. 3 is Sarah. 2 is Emily. And the number 1 girl's name last year was Caitlin, Kaitlyn. Now, that is an unusual name that we really have only seen in the last few years, right?
Yes, especially in that spelling. You've only seen it that way in the last 10 years or so.
Yeah, where did that come from?
Well, that's a funny thing because it's the original spelling is Caitlin, and that's really just the Irish Gaelic way to spell Kathleen. Mm-hmm. But about 15, 20 years ago, Irish Americans on the East Coast started reading that and picking it up, and of course they, being American and not really knowing how to pronounce Gaelic, said Caitlin, and not realizing really in Ireland it's Scotland.
Okay.
And then it spread all over the country. It's also sort of one of the main examples of the fashionable sound right now in a lot of new names is the long A vowel in the first syllable.
Mm-hmm.
And Caitlin is just the most popular of all of those.
We also have just different names. I mean, Brianna is not one that I've heard that often. Samantha, of course, I've heard. Madison is rather new and unusual, right?
Yes, that comes from the mermaid in the movie Splash. I don't think there were any girls named Madison before that.
And and Alexis, I mean, that was a woman on on Dynasty or something.
Yes.
So the boys list tends to be these stronger, more traditional, old-fashioned names. The girls list tends to be more contemporary. Is that how we'd summarize it?
Yes. People are much more interested in giving their daughters new names than they are their sons.
Why?
Well, some of that just comes from the almost sexism of, I think, when baby girls are born, a lot of people don't project them into the future as adults. They just think of them as children, while boys, they project into the future in their mind as adults, and they're more likely to want to, carry on family names and give them things that are serious sounding.
So when a person names a child, do you think that's going to impact the rest of their life?
Yes, although I don't want to say that that's as big an influence perhaps as some people think it is. I think most of the correlation between what a name is like, what personalities are like, are because certain sort of parents give their kids certain sort of names. But of course, the really outrageous examples, like, kids name things like tragedy and nausea, I mean, obviously that's going to be a bad influence on them.
I saw a person once at a store, and he was at the checkout, and his name is Braxton. Braxton I associate with my childbirth classes where, you have birth pangs. They're called Braxton Hicks, and I almost wonder if the mother didn't name him Braxton after the contractions or something.
Oh, I don't think so. That's actually one that's getting a little more popular now.
Oh, it is?
Well, I think some people are using it as an alternative to Brandon, which is big, and it goes. Actually, you could think of it historically going back to the Civil War, because there was a Confederate general named Braxton Bragg.
Interesting. In Iowa, the number one girl's name is Emily, but what's interesting is that Emily and Jacob, the top names in Iowa, are also the top names in Minnesota, Missouri, and Nebraska. Mm-hmm. So these must be top in the Midwest. And then if you go out into the Northeast, you have a little different set of names. And if you go down south, for example, California and Texas, the number one boy's name last year was Jose.
Yes.
So obviously we have regionalism here.
Yes, although, of course, the California, Texas, it's regionalism because they have so many recent Hispanic immigrants.
But Samantha is top in the Northeast, in the northeastern states. Why in the world, like New York and New Jersey, why would Samantha be popular out there and not be so popular here? That's what I'm trying to figure out. What makes a name more regional?
Some of it, I haven't figured out myself yet. I think some of it has to do with different traditions. The East Coast has always been more traditional than the rest of the country in its names. They've been a bit more conservative, which is interesting, since people think of them politically as being more liberal sometimes. But in terms of names, they've been more conservative, and part of it may be the more recent immigrants. Outside of the Hispanics, immigrants actually tend to be more conservative in what they name their kids, because they give them names of adult Americans they've met trying to assimilate, and they aren't into the culture enough yet to realize they should be naming them things like Samantha,
Jennifer,
and Taylor.
One other question about this girls list: aren't some of these just forms of men's names? Like Alexis is a form of Alex, Samantha is a form of Sam, Ashley even used to be a male name many, many years ago. Madison gives me a male feel, to be honest with you, because our president,
Oh yeah, most of those. I mean, Alexis was a male name originally. It's originally actually a Russian form.
The name Alexis was actually an original male name.
Sure, and it still is used as a male name in the Hispanic community sometimes. And
so why
Ashley itself is a wonderful example of that, because in England it's still considered a male name.
So why are people naming their girls what used to be men's names?
That again is sort of part of sexism. You have names in our culture switch gender from male to female all the time, but they never go from female to male because a lot of people think it's cute somehow to give a girl a boy's name, especially one that ends in Y, which makes it sound a little more like a child, again, to a lot of people. And but of course, it's never cute, to name a boy something that sounds female.
Our guest is Dr. Cleveland Kent Evans. He's the author of The Ultimate Baby Name Guide. It's available in bookstores as we continue on Winsenberg on the Weekend on News Radio 1040 WHO.
On the Weekend.
Right now, Dr. Cleveland Kent Evans, the author of The Ultimate Baby Name Guide. And we're taking your calls. And let's go to Becca first from Ankeny. Becca, how do you spell that?
B-I-C-K-A.
That's pretty much what it sounds like.
Yep.
Okay, Becca.
Yep.
Do you want to know what that means? Or?
Well, I want to know if anybody else has ever had the name.
Okay, Dr. Evans?
Well, out of the billions of people who lived on the earth, I'd be surprised if there wasn't one other somewhere.
I would think so, too.
But that is extremely unusual. I've never seen it before. Do you know why your parents chose it?
Well, my dad's nickname was Bick when he was a little kid, and he didn't know why he had that nickname either. And so I was the firstborn child, and so they put an A on it to make it feminine, I presume, and I came up with Becca.
So that's the actual name on your birth certificate.
That it is,
Becca.
yeah. And my middle name is V with two E's behind it.
V-E-E.
Yeah.
Becca V.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was just a little strange.
That's creative. A lot of women are named after their fathers with, feminized, but I haven't heard of one who it was actually his nickname that they used before.
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
His real name was Merle, and I guess I'd rather take Becca.
So do you like that? Do you like your name, Becca?
Yeah, I like it because it's unusual.
But it must cause problems, right, in terms of people having a hard time with it or thinking it's something else?
Yes, I have a lot of Becca, B-E, and but once people have heard it and, have gotten to know me, then they don't forget it very often.
That's for sure.
You call someplace and you talk to someone and you call them back and they remember you.
Well, that's wonderful.
So that's the good part of an unusual name.
Well, thanks for sharing your name with us. And if you hold on, we're going to get your information so you can get a copy of the Ultimate Baby Name Guide. We're giving away books today from Dr. Cleveland Kent Evans. And Letty, you're up next. Hi, Letty.
Hi.
How are you today?
Just fine.
What's the name you're going to ask about?
Letitia. That's my real name.
Yeah,
Letty is a nickname.
I've heard Letitia before. Dr. Evans?
Yes, that goes back to a Latin name which meant happiness in ancient Rome.
So your name means happiness, Letty.
Isn't that nice?
Have you heard that before?
No.
Have you found it? Dr. Evans, is this in one of your books? Is Letitia a name that would be in there? Is it that common?
Well, yes, although the commonest spelling now is, L-A-T-I-S-H-A, and probably more Letitia is more how people still say it.
Letty, how do you spell your name?
L-E-T-I-T-I-A.
Okay.
Well, that would be more the traditional spelling. That's really closer to the original Latin
The
way.
one you spelled was the way my aunt spelled hers, and I was named after her.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom didn't like the way it was spelled, so she changed the spelling.
Well,
Do you like your name, Letty?
Yeah.
That doesn't sound very positive.
Well, I've had it a long time, so I guess I'm used to it.
What's your middle name?
June.
Okay.
That's because I was born in June.
So you're just happy with it because you've had it for a while.
Yeah, I have 4 brothers, and 2 of them call me Tish, because that's what my aunt was called. And I never liked that name.
Oh, I think that's kind of cute.
Yeah.
Gives you kind of a youthful feel.
But I have seen Letitia spelled differently, and it's usually your Spanish people. They'll spell it L-E-T-I-C-I-A in different ways that way.
Well, thanks, Tish. Letty.
Okay.
You hold on. We're going to get the information from you. Okay, and Brad, you're up next on Winsenberg on the Weekend on WHO. Hi, Brad.
Hi.
What name are you going to ask about?
I have a 100-year-old grandmother. Her name is Floy, F-L-O-Y.
Floy.
Just wondering if that was something from 100 years ago or if it's something you've never heard of before.
It is from 100 years ago, but what it was a nickname originally for Florence back there.
I see.
If you think what it looks like, Flo was for Florence, and then Floey was what they were doing, but then it sort of turned into Floy when people looked at it.
Okay.
That is kind of unusual, isn't it, Brad?
Yes, it is.
Okay, you hold on. We'll get your information and get you a copy of that book. And Susan, you're up next on Winsenberg on the Weekend. Hi, Susan.
Hi.
What's the name you're going to ask about?
Jeef.
Pardon me?
Jeef.
Spell it.
J-E-A-F.
Jeaf.
That was my great-grandfather from Alta, Iowa.
Jeaf.
Uh-huh. His last name was Anderson, and he was Danish. Do you think it could be a Danish name?
It's possibly an Americanization of a Danish name. You know, something that happened to him when he immigrated. A lot of people got their names really mangled, you know, when they came over to this country.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they wouldn't actually have the J sound in Danish, so it was something else that got mixed up somehow when they came over here. And I don't have a Danish dictionary in front of me, so I can't really try to figure out what it would be.
Well, that's an interesting name.
And Brad's grandmother's named Floy.
Right.
There was an old school teacher in Spencer, Iowa named Floy, and she was a woman.
Interesting. Well, thanks, Susan. You hold on. We'll get your information. We're going to continue to take calls, but after the first 6, we won't give books away, but we'll continue to take calls with our guest, Dr. Cleveland Kent Evans. He's the author of the Ultimate Baby Name Guide and also a smaller edition called Unusual and Most Popular Baby Names. We're giving away copies of the book. And Dr. Evans, some of those old-fashioned names are coming back in, aren't they?
Oh, yes.
Even some of the foreign names. I mean, we have friends like named Niels and Hans and things like that. And names that kind of went out for a while are now coming back in, right?
Yeah, well, that sort of happens every generation, as particularly more educated people, you know, college professor types tend to bring things back first. But we're getting a lot of Abigails and Emmas now. In fact, Iowa, it looks like, is one of the states where Emma's already the highest, you know. I think you have more Emmas over there than most other places.
Well, there's that actress Emma Sams, and she's come to Des Moines quite often for the Variety Club telethon. So maybe that's it. Maybe as they start to see a more traditional name like that on a younger, more attractive actress, maybe they think that would be a good name for their child or something.
Oh, well, that's a really good observation, especially since, you know, we're sort of importing that from England. You know, it was big in England when Emma Sams was born over there.
That's right, and and she's been back here a number of times for the Variety Club telethon. So that may be one of the reasons. And I think that's one of the jobs you have to take, isn't it? You have to kind of hunt this down a little bit and try to figure out why would all of a sudden a name like Emma pop up in Iowa and become popular again.
Oh yes, you know, and it's fun when you finally figure out some of these things, you know, and know where things are coming from.
Yeah. It's Winsenberg on the Weekend, News Radio 1040, WHO. Let's finish up with Dr. Cleveland Kent Evans, the author of the Ultimate Baby Name Guide. And Dr. Evans, let's get back to the phone lines. We still got a couple of books to give away.
Uh-huh.
And Terry, you're up next. Hi, Terry.
Hi.
What's your name that you're going to talk about?
It's Taryn, and there's 2 spellings that I know of, Taryn and Tarin. And I'm wondering if this is an older name or if it's more of a contemporary name.
The Taryn is very contemporary. The first person I know named that was the daughter of the actor Tyrone Power, and Linda Darnell, and I think she'd probably be around 50 today. And I think what they did was, when she was born, Karen and Sharon were very popular names. I think what they did was they sort of created a feminine out of this. They used the letters from Tyrone and then created a feminine on the lines of sounding like Karen and Sharon.
So it's a combination of names, really.
Yeah, but she was Taryn,
right,
which is the original spelling.
So
but I think
Tarin is more the modern. Yeah, because I've seen that on some newborn babies, right, Terry?
Mm-hmm. Have you seen? Well, I've known one person with that name. Have you seen it used a lot?
It was perhaps bigger in the 80s, but it was enough to be noticeable. You know, it wasn't top 10, but there certainly were quite a few born back in the 80s.
Okay. Well, thanks, Terry. We'll get your information. Let's get another caller here. Chris, I think you're going to get our last book. Hi, Chris.
Hi.
What's your name that you're going to talk about?
Well, we named our 5-year-old son now Trey when he was born, Trae.
Trey?
And, yeah. And I was just wondering if it was ever a popular name or if this just something new. We were looking for something different, and I'd never heard of it before. Yep.
Well, it's becoming more popular. The most common spelling is Trey.
Uh-huh.
Did you respell it deliberately with the AE?
I had just seen it somewhere that way, and I just liked it, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, originally what it was it was a nickname in the prep school culture on the East Coast for boys who had the Roman numeral 3 after their name, like, John Smith III.
Oh.
And it goes back to the Latin word for third.
Sure.
And that's what it originally was.
Chris, what's his middle name?
And this is kind of a story, too. His middle name is Leonard, which is after my grandfather who passed away while I was pregnant with him. And the story is that, and I didn't realize it when I named him that, but, Trey is 3, and my grandpa would have been Leonard. He named his son's middle name Leonard, and so Trey is really the third Leonard, too.
So
it kind of has a little story,
So it's also an unusual combinations of names because you've got the modern Trey with the little more old-fashioned Leonard, too.
Right. And I'm pregnant again, and I'm looking for another different
name also. How about Quattro?
I don't know about that. I have an older son.
Well, after Trey comes Quattro, right?
Yeah, I have an older son named Tyler, which that was kind of unusual 8 years ago, too. It wasn't, real popular. So I'm just kind of looking for something different again, I guess.
Okay, well, you could get his book. As a matter of fact, you're going to get a copy of his book. Dr. Evans, one more question before we finish up with you, and thanks to everyone for calling. Again, the book is called The Ultimate Baby Name Guide. How would you advise people to choose names for their babies? What's the process to go through in just a minute or so?
Well, I think that people should take it seriously in the sense that they should really think about why they like the names that they like and choose something that fits in with the values they want to impart to their child. And be able to tell your child a story about his or her name when they ask, as they all will eventually, why you name them that. I think it helps kids to get a good sense of identity if they have a story about where their name came from that's more than just, we thought it sounded pretty.
So even if it's a very unusual name, if there's a strong story there, that's a positive thing.
And I think the woman you just had on with the linking with the grandfather Leonard, the third Leonard. I mean, that's a good sort of story, that the kid can hang on to.
That's a good
to start to develop his sense of identity.
Very good piece of advice. It's always a pleasure to have you on, Dr. Evans. We'll have to do it again because the phone lines just went kind of crazy with you here, and hopefully people will be able to get your books and look up some more information. This is Stephen Winsenberg on The Weekend on News Radio 1040 WHO.